So just want to set out a few things about this whole YouTube business, right? They're claiming that it's private. That's what everyone's talking about now, including the Hill program and other programs. It's all to do with it. The issue is, it's private, right? I want to point out a few things, right, when it comes to the law, right? So we've got the public domain, right? You know, the public area, you know. So you've got your public domain here, which I'm drawing as grass, you know, or the street, you know. This is the public area that the taxpayer pays for, right? So, and places accessible by the public or where there's a public right of way through there, like on Dartmoor, where they've just had that case about wild camping and medical rights, where you can camp because you can have the tent that comes along with your medical rights if you need to stop and rest and shelter from the rain. Although they argued whether camping was a recreational activity or not, but the council's installed recreational benches. So, when we are petitioning, right, the right to petition, people were getting prosecuted whether they were in private houses or not out in public, in the public area. When they were in their own private personal house, they were getting prosecuted for having meetings and so forth, right? Now, the thing with the law is this. It doesn't matter if you are outside in public or if you are in your house or garden, right? If you murder someone or kill someone, or if you punch someone or hit them or whatever, the laws apply to the whole realm, right? No matter, unless in America, apparently if someone comes into your house, you can shoot them, right? For defence. Although in England, I think a farmer shot someone with a shotgun and he got prosecuted. So the laws are in effect everywhere. Now, there are some laws that apply when you're in private property or when you're not in private property. Like, for example, even if the property is yours or not, like the house, right? Here we've got the house, and if it's your property and you own it and your furniture, right? If you want to pull your sofa to pieces, that's not criminal damage because you own it. But if someone else does, apparently it is. That's a criminal charge, right? Criminal damage. If someone comes into your house, pulls it to pieces, that's criminal damage. But if you want to do some things, it's not. But then we've got that recent case with the pub being demolished, right? They purchased the building, but they didn't have permission from the government, from the council or government, to demolish it all. They didn't have the right to demolish it all. They only had the legal right to do a certain thing to it, but then it ended up getting burned or arson and then totally demolished. Yet when you breach planning, you only get a fine, right? This has been happening time and time again. An entire building can be demolished and you get fined for a planning breach or even made to rebuild it, but you don't get criminally charged. Some at our ancient site, the Tandy brothers, they demolished an old pub, but weren't supposed to demolish all of it. And then when they were building this building, they built it. Well, it wasn't to what they applied planning permission for. So there are all these things completely destroying or building things and so forth, and all they do is get fined. Now, if you've got loads of money, these big investors which have started buying up everything, you can literally just do what you want to the whole town or village and just pay off fines. Although the council might enforce you or make you do something, but criminal liability, you know, no one's trying to prosecute them for the intent Because in the Criminal Damage Act, it says if you've got a right, privilege or interest. Well, you don't have the right to demolish it if you didn't have the permission, do you? Why aren't these people getting prosecuted for criminal damage to the buildings? I don't know. The police don't seem to want to do it, pursue it, yet they're going after protesters. Now, the right to petition says that you can't be prosecuted if you're doing petitioning. So, and the thing with the Town and Country Planning Act, what defines an advertisement, it says any sign, picture, image or letters or a representation, which could mean like a public display, or even public speaking or theatre or even a publicity stunt or something, right? Anything you do in public, you know, let's meant to be a megaphone. So, you know, publishing in newspapers is advertising, but anywhere that you publish something, it's an advertisement or giving some sort of notice or something. But the thing is, so everything under the Town and Country Planning Act, anything that is given a message or interpretable as a notice or a sign, because road signs are also under there as well, it's classed as the same. Now, you've got different classes in there because different law actually applies to different types of advert. And then you've got the E for elections and then F, which uses the enactment, the immunity enactment, right? Which we know that goes through the Town and Country Planning. So when you get onto criminal damage, it's not that act, it's the Town and Country Planning Act. And even if it was criminal damage, it says if you're using a right. And same in the Highways Act, if you've got authority. The Town and Country Planning Act gives you the deemed consent and authority, right? Now, the thing is this. Newspapers, right? The newspaper is privately owned. It's privately owned. And the house is privately owned, unless it's a landlord, but someone owns it. Now, even in a factory or a business, right? Even in a factory, if you've got a factory, right? If you've got a factory, it's privately owned. Someone owns it, but people work there because the premises are licensed as a business, right? So you get, and they've got to comply with certain laws, employment laws for staff, right? It's private, but there's laws for staff. And there's still laws for rights, like medical rights and so forth. And then you've got all these trading standards, and then you've got all your what's happening now with the unions. But political rights is about mainly being prosecuted or held to any commitments. The trading, putting material up in work comes under these unions and putting union material up in the workplace. And the thing is that when we've got, you know, the street here, the public area, the public arena, there are certain laws as well that are different. Now, one of these, right, I'll use this colour, and I'm just using it for representational purposes, right? So this is a thing with YouTube, right? So look at, I'm going to use the discrimination law. The discrimination law is about discrimination, right? Now, it says that you can't discriminate against people in the public places, right? Now, a factory is privately owned, okay? But also someone's private house is privately owned. Now, you can be in someone's private house, according to what I've read, and I'll check up on this, right? But this is the principle. If I'm correct, check it out. It says that all those discrimination laws, or at least the racism one, I think, doesn't apply in a private house. Check up on that, right? But it applies in public. Now, the thing is, a building, a factory, is privately owned, right? It's privately owned. So could you be racist in a factory if it's privately owned? This is the thing, right? You can't be in a public place, but if a business premises is privately owned, I didn't see anything in that discrimination law about workplaces particularly. But I'm sure that when it comes to discrimination, when it comes to all your discrimination and so forth, I think that's why they have the policy, because you've got all your normal laws like harassment laws which apply anywhere, and violence and fighting and so forth. But because the company is private, is that why you have the policy in the first place? Because there are some things that might be legal, but they don't want people doing, right? Where it might be illegal in public, but not illegal in private. So they have to make the policy, or vice versa. Now, if you're in a private house, it's not a registered business and it's not a company, right? And it's not a certified company or licensed to trade or anything. It's just a normal private residence. So most people in a private house don't have a policy, or anything in writing, like, those house rules or whatever, unless it's a public free house. But in a public free house, people usually speak freely in a pub, right? So there are differences in the law when you're in public and private. For example, there's more laws in public than in private when it comes to discrimination and things like that. So you've got these policies, but the policy doesn't apply in a private house. It applies in the workplace. There might be some different legislation for the workplace compared to private house. I'll have to check up on that, but there is a differentiation. Now, the thing with the right to petition, it protects the person. The right to petition protects the person from being prosecuted, legal challenges, or being held to any commitments. They were prosecuting people for being in private houses and talking about certain things. And they were prosecuting them for meeting in the public, or many people gathering together in the public, or even because of their opinion on what they were asking for. Certain things they were asking the government to do, which the government didn't want them to do, or certain religious beliefs, right? Now, when we look at the history, there are all these different things, and they were even charging them. They were charging them for submitting petitions at one point, a lot of the articles. And, there were tumultuous act getting it checked by three justices, a grand jury, or the magistrates of London. No, London. So when they actually enact this law, the Scottish version says all imprisonments and prosecutions are illegal. The English Bill of Rights, it says all prosecutions are illegal and commitments, right? Now, they didn't have to say all prosecutions. If they were getting prosecuted for certain things, like, There were things that were illegal and there were things that were illegal back then. There were things that were legal and there were things that was illegal back then, right? And then there were just things that were, there wasn't actually any law really for, speaking. But yet they were bringing these charges, about, because they were opposing governments and so forth, or having certain religious views. I think there was laws for religious views, but they decided, instead of putting, saying that, the free speech and this and that, there were clauses for the right to speak freely are separate from the right to petition. And, speaking about debate, it actually covers debate, which is political opinion and debate about politics, about things that you're going to be taken to Parliament to argue about. So that covers you in private, right? That's an illegal arena. It's covering you in private, being in private, and in public, anywhere. It says all. Doesn't matter who owns it, because this is private. This factory is private, but people work all day and they might talk to each other while they're working, unless the policy is, silence, like in a library or whatever. But then you've got free speech. I think it would be very, very difficult to have a factory where you forbid any speaking to each other, because you've got free speeches for the whole country. The policy, therefore, will be trying to take away one of your fundamental rights of free speech. The right to petition. Free speech is not the right to petition. This is an extra one. You can't be held to any commitments at all whatsoever. For free speech, it doesn't say that you can't be held to any commitments, does it? So once you're speaking politically, that you can't be held to any commitments. So that would add something that would stop a policy, surely, from being brought on there. But they definitely said all. Now, if you take into account that, people are completely demolishing buildings without even suffering a criminal charge when they didn't have the right to do it, how can anyone, therefore, be prosecuted criminally for breaking a window or criminal damage, at least if they're using this right to petition that protects them from prosecutions or imprisonment? The person who doesn't have the right to, or any legal permission or authority to demolish a building, even though he owns it, right? He's not getting a criminal charge, right? Yet an entire building is demolished, even if he owns it. This is the thing. But he doesn't have the right to demolish it. So you might be able to say, can people be fined? Can they be fined for, breaking windows or causing criminal damage, painting on buildings, or whether it's, private building or in public, right? Can they be fined like the person who might demolish a building who doesn't have the right or permission to do it, but not be prosecuted or imprisoned? Because all prosecutions are illegal. To be honest, the person who demolishes a building without permission didn't have the right to, but this right, privilege or interest, they don't have the privilege either, because they've got the privilege of owning the building, they've got the privilege of owning the building, and they've got the privilege of doing what they want to their property where they've got the right to, except where the planning permission takes away their privilege. They don't have the privilege. Now, how about an interest? But if they've got, the thing is, if they've got an interest, right, an interest in demolishing it, so what if they don't have a right? They might have an interest in demolishing it, but with an interest is intent. If they've got an interest, they've got intent. If they had an interest in demolishing it, but no right or privilege, is that criminal damage? Because they damaged a building which the council had protected for the community, didn't have the right to do it. But they really wanted to get rid of it, but they can't legally. So they're more liable, really, to be prosecuted for criminal damage than any of these prosecutors, because they're not actually claiming a political right or petitioning for the interest. Now, the thing is, for trespass, if someone's football goes into the garden, right, anyone can go up the drive anyway and knock on the door if they've got an interest in speaking to the person, or if they're serving notices. The postman goes into the house, not into the house, up the drive all the time, right? So it's normal to go onto property unless someone asks you to leave. But if your ball goes onto there, it's actually your property. The ball, if in the garden, is your property. So you go onto the property, onto their property, to retrieve your property because it's yours. So this is under trespassing where you've got a reasonable excuse, or so forth. But even then, you're not claiming any petitioning right or anything like that if you're going to get the ball. Or if you're serving a notice, for petition, which is what they climbed on Rishi Sunak's roof and to serve the notice to him. And they got arrested for trespassing. But I don't think that, because it's a political message and it's serving a notice, you can go on there to deliver it, right? And actually, they have to be asked to leave. But, so now the thing is, when we are inside buildings, when we're inside these buildings, when you're in someone's house anyway, a private house is not a registered company. It's not got staff. It's not registered for business premises or anything. And anyone who's in your house, right, has got the right to free speech anyway. Now, if they're not your friends and you don't like them, then you can ask them to leave your property after they've spoken in your response. But if they didn't have free speech, right, they wouldn't be able to open their mouth in the first place to say anything, to speak freely, right? That's free speech. You can do it. Now, if the person didn't like what you're saying, the person doesn't like what you're saying in response, they can always fall out with you and say, get out of my house, right? But with political opinion, are you protected? This is the thing. Now, with you see, if you're in a private house, and you happen to be a person of colour, right? Apparently the owner of the house, right, apparently you can throw them out if you don't like what they say, right, although you can't stop them from saying it in the first place, right? You can ask them to leave, if you just don't want them in your house, supposedly. This is just a normal residential house. It's not licensed for business, right? But apparently if you're in a private house and these people are of colour, you can be racist to them and it not be criminal. You're not a criminal, right? And a normal house wouldn't have a policy or company policy. It's not registered as a business to have policies, right? So the company, the business, has these policies mainly because there are sometimes it's private, but it's business. Now, there are certain laws for business and certain laws for private and certain laws for public. Now, with the business, though, these businesses have to comply with UK legislation and laws. The businesses have to comply with UK legislation and laws. In fact, some of them say they will, on their policy, they say they will comply with all the laws. Now, if they in their policy want to add different rules in a policy, because it's a business, and a policy is something that you agree to, because it's not the law. only parts of the law which apply anyway you have to comply with, and the premises have to comply with it, right? Their policies is something extra that you agree to by working there or going in there, right? Which you don't have in the private house if it's not a registered company to have a policy. Now, they can't write anything in their policy which is unlawful or illegal. Now, we've got enactments of law like the right to petition, okay, which apply to the whole country, everywhere. The right to petition doesn't say only applies to public or private. There is nothing in the right to petition that says, like, in the discrimination laws, it differentiates between you're on private land, if it's not illegal to discriminate, or if you're in public, it is illegal to discriminate. And then with the company, you've got the policy. Now, the company makes up its own rules and policies, right, for things like discrimination or, fire escapes, just rules, for procedures you've got to go by with fire alarms and all manner of things, right? But it can't write into its policy anything where enactments of law exist which makes it illegal, right? Now, the thing is, it says it's going to comply with and apply all these laws, one of which is the Bill of Rights, which says in the kingdom, all prosecutions and commitments are illegal. And it doesn't say only in private or only in public. In fact, if we look at the history and the study of it, people were getting prosecuted by the government for saying what they want in private, let alone the person who owns the house kicking them out. So it doesn't matter what the person who owned the house said. In fact, he was inviting them over to talk about things, but the government were prosecuting all of them. The people who have got the house and the owner, the people who are in the house who are going round to it, visiting, and the owner of the house, right? With the discrimination law, the person who owns the private house and property can now say what he wants in there, right? We've got the right to speak freely in there, but then if he doesn't like the response to it, he might tell us to leave, right? But there's no crime. We can't be prosecuted, right? He reverts onto this trespass law. But he wouldn't be able to speak about political things freely, even if we weren't in there. If he was in there by himself in his own house, right, he can, discriminate against whatever he wants with his own opinion. And if he's with his friends, right, they can talk about their political opinions, right? If they were outside in public, right, him and his friend wouldn't be allowed in public to talk freely about their political opinions if it wasn't for the Bill of Rights or in the house. And he can't, if he wants to speak about, racial matters or discriminate in his private house if he goes outside, he can't in public, right? So he can't actually do something in public that he could do in his house. Now, with YouTube, we'll use this factory example here because YouTube's got a building, right, with staff and, staff and so forth in the building, and they've got the policy. Now, there's nothing in the Bill of Rights that says it differentiates between private property or public. Nothing at all. It says all prosecutions and commitments. So you're covered by this. Doesn't matter when you're in private or you're in public or you're in a business premises. This covers you yourself, right? And this actually, in the private house, you don't have policies, remember. In the private house, a private house, the private house doesn't have policies because it's not a registered business or company or have staff or anything, right? in the factory, they're enacting these policies. Now, what YouTube, right? YouTube are not throwing you off YouTube when it comes to you uploading videos on the basis of just that it's private. Purely, it's private. You know, it's their private thing because you're not actually in a building. In fact, you're sat at home. When you're on YouTube, you yourself physically are sat in your home, right? And YouTube itself is on your computer in your home, right? It's similar as when you're in public. When you're in public and things are accessible or visible or there's a public right of way past, right? Now, YouTube's not membership. It has no membership to it. There's no membership to YouTube. And it's not private. It's not invite only. You don't have to join it. Anyone who's got internet or free internet can just go on there and read it and look at it like a newspaper. And you don't even have to pay to do that. You had to pay to buy a newspaper, right? You had to pay money to buy a newspaper. But for YouTube, you don't even have to pay any money. So it is publicly accessible, publicly readable, and publicly visible. When you're logged out of it, when you aren't logged in, you don't need an account, right? You aren't in any private premises, right? In fact, you're in your premises. Now, so YouTube really, it's more like a newspaper that you don't pay for, right? But there are things on there. Now, this is the bit that is crucial because when you put in things onto the newspaper, right? So you usually pay to put things in the newspaper unless they want to take your story on, right? You pay money for ads. And they've got public notices, they've got legal, they've got recreational, business, and so forth. And sometimes they give free adverts for free. If it's a small newspaper and lost property or public notices, all of them used to have some free if it was not for profit, which this includes your petitions and so forth. And a public notice board, when it's called a public notice board, it's meant to be a public notice board, public notices to the public, but in a privately owned newspaper, right? Now, the thing with YouTube is this, that you can pay to put ads on there, and it does have a political section and disclaimers and so forth for each country. It has political sections, and they apply disclaimer and recognise political material. It doesn't matter. Under the Town and Country Planning Act, advertisement is any notice, message or sign, right? It's classed as an advertisement. We normally know an advertisement as something that you pay for. But in the Town and Country Planning Act, it's just the sign, the notice, the material, the message, the writing, the letters, the representation, the speech, the theatrical presentation or publicity stunt. It's all a sign or advertisement. But then you've got your different legal classes which have different law, and one of the laws, like I say, is the right to petition. But on YouTube, right, where the thing with YouTube currently is you can open an account, right? You can open an account and you can put videos on there, register with an email address and upload onto it, like publishing in the newspaper, for free. It costs nothing and all the public see it. It's accessible to the public. It's accessible, visible to people for free in libraries with free Wi-Fi, anyone with a phone. That's publicly accessible, and there are notices which are displayed and visible to the general public. It's not a private club. It's not members only. You don't have to join to read and view it, right? So it isn't private like a private house, because if it was private, in a private house, you can't even be in there, look at things and talk to people without the owner's permission. On YouTube, anyone can see, read and watch it without even being a member. So it isn't private. And you don't even have to buy it like a newspaper, pay £1 to read it, right? Or look at the pictures. So legally, it's more like a newspaper. But they've got these policies. But the policies say they'll comply with all these acts of law here. All these acts of law and legislation, they say every act of state and federal law we will comply with. That means they will apply. That means you might as well have them all framed on the wall in there. If you say that you are going to comply with, right? If you make a statement saying we will comply with state, federal and foreign laws, they're the laws that you can have in here, that means that you might as well have an art gallery inside YouTube headquarters, and instead of all those trophies and awards on the wall, you might as well have all the acts of law displayed on the walls in there, because they said that they'll comply with them, right? On the walls. Now, some of those acts of law say that, they only apply outside in public. So when you're reading it, it won't be relevant to you when you're in YouTube headquarters if it applies only to private property or public, because you're inside YouTube's building. Now, YouTube's building, they've got private areas of it and so forth, but they've got other areas you can walk into, right? When you're in your house, you're not in there, though. If you've got the Bill of Rights on the wall in YouTube headquarters, it would be very strange if that law didn't apply to you. Now, does that law say that, this law only applies in public or in private? No, it doesn't. It says it applies everywhere. It doesn't say it's the right to petition in public, and it doesn't say it's the right to petition in private. Because the thing is with this, right, if this Bill of Rights, right, if the Bill of Rights didn't... this is the thing. If you are in, if I'll get you the yellow colour now. If you were in, Neil Mohan's house, right, and he wanted to, with this discrimination thing, right, the government, the state, is not going to prosecute or bring charges for whatever he says. But if he was out in public, then they could, right? So that act has got different parts in public and private, but the right to petition doesn't. For the right to petition, it's everywhere, right? So it would be like that. It would be similar to the discrimination. If there was no discrimination, if you couldn't be prosecuted for discrimination, then you couldn't be prosecuted for discrimination whether you're in a private house or not in the private house, right? So it comes down to policy and ownership. Now, the thing with the workplace or the public arena is that anyone's allowed into the public, right? To be there. You're allowed to be in the private house when you've got consent. The thing with the factory is only workers are there or people who are allowed. But the thing is, when you're logged out of YouTube, and anyone can read it and view it. So it's like having anyone can read and have the newspaper. So it's just this thing of putting things onto it. If you are inside YouTube, surely if you are walking around YouTube and you are looking at the medals and awards and pictures on the walls and you're speaking to your friend, surely YouTube cannot tell you what you can and can't say to your friend. Like, well, I like this picture or don't like that picture, or look at this TV screen or this or that. As long as you don't break the rules of America and the law, so they ring the police up to come round, you're all right, okay? So this is where their policy comes in. They're making rules up that you will comply with. We will abide by these policy rules when we're in here. We agree to them or consent to them, right? Because it's a private premises that can have policies because it's a business, right? But it says Congress can't make a law, or no state should make a law to stop you petitioning. So if there's a legislation which exists, which is deciding what people can say in private and what people can say in public, or trespassing when people can throw you off the property and when people can't throw you off the property, that's an act of law which differentiates between whose is whose and what's is what's and where you are and where you aren't are private and public. But the Act does that. But the 1688 Bill of Rights does not differentiate between that at all. And in fact, it says that there can't be no laws made or changed. So it's all about this policy. The thing is, if this policy was the law and if they were enacting it, they wouldn't be allowed to. Surely, if something is illegal it's so illegal and you're so not allowed to do it that even the government can't make a law to stop you doing it. And neither can the state. So how can a company or someone in the private, how can anyone make a rule up that is not even the law? This is the thing. But the thing, if that policy said that we don't want to apply or comply with this law, how can it when Congress can't make up a law to even not do it? They're saying that this company or business will comply with and apply with this. Right? And there are many, many people in here. But the thing with a lot of these platforms and businesses and newspapers is it isn't being treated as private like a private house because you've got people in there. You're having people in there like a shop. It's publicly accessible or, open for business or accessible or visible by the public. And I believe that anywhere that you are or can be, they're kind of like wanting to switch. They're wanting to treat each visitor, each person kind of differently who's in there. They said anyone can be in there, the whole public, if they want to come in, but we're going to discriminate. They're basically discriminating against your free speech or your political opinion, which is what the Bill of Rights is, when even the government can't prosecute you for certain things, right? Even the government, you've got immunity and protection from the government from law, but the owner of the property is trying to say that you don't have immunity from them or their policy. And they're saying that they can discriminate between each of you in the same way that someone in a private house can discriminate against his guests or visitors. But the thing is, with the newspaper and with YouTube, in the newspaper, you pay for these ads. And on YouTube, you can pay for ads. But on YouTube, you can, effectively, when you start a channel, you're not paying for it and it's free. So, but what you're uploading, all those videos and content and material on YouTube, particularly if it's for a petition campaign or elections, but even normally, under the Town and Country Planning Act, even whether it's private land, private property or in public, they're classed as adverts. It's still advertisements, whether it's paid for or not. So on YouTube, even though they've got an ads department and you can pay for ads and you access it separately, everything on YouTube is classed as adverts. Only when your channel is up there and people are searching with a search engine on YouTube or viewing it, or it's showing them, you're not paying for those ads. They're unpaid for. In fact, if they're monetized, people are paying you for them. You're getting money, although you might not be monetized. My channel's not monetized. So effectively, it's free ads. YouTube is free ads. And it's free ads in a free paper. Effectively, because anyone can look at it and read it and watch it without membership fee or paying, and anyone can have a channel and upload to the channel without paying for ads. So YouTube must be treated as free ads in a newspaper. It has to be. Although the only difference is the newspapers have got these night lawyers, right? Like Black Belt Barrister or Alan used to do. Night lawyers, and they had to check the newspapers. Now YouTube have got this exemption section which says that because they're so huge, so big, they can't possibly check everything. They're immune from having to check it. Well, they're not immune from having to check it because they are checking it. They are checking it. If they're immune from checking it, they won't be checking it. But what they're doing is they are pulling stuff down on behalf of people who complain or anything that's illegal, the government. So you've got it's like traffic lights. You've got YouTube themselves or a third party. Like, say that orange is like another person who might something that they don't like or want on there, and then you've got YouTube with their own opinion, and then you've got stuff that is actually illegal, right? Now, YouTube, the reason they have the immunity is meant to protect them from things that are illegal that they might get otherwise prosecuted for, like a newspaper. Not just for their policy things, because they're not illegal. So they wouldn't get prosecuted for the policy breaches. So all their immunity is only protecting them from things that are illegal, not things that are in their policy, because they won't be prosecuted for that anyway, right? Now, this is the thing. So what they're doing is they're pulling people's things down that they just don't like themselves. And all of their system that is massive and all that trouble of legislation acts to stop them getting prosecuted and all of their facilities and programs to remove things and let people report things really was because things might be illegal, right? But they've got this other area, which is things that they just don't want themselves on there. But that's not why they get their immunity, and not really why they had to have the whole thing in the first place, because of things that might be illegal. So they've got this area of their own policy now, and really, if you know, so that immunity really they've got is nothing to do with things that aren't illegal, because they wouldn't be charged or prosecuted anyway. But this whole argument is not about putting things on there. It's about getting them taken off. YouTube removing them, and not removing them because they're illegal, right? Even though they're protected themselves. So it's all actually about YouTube's own opinion, right? It's about YouTube's own opinion. Like with this, they've created this new term, that might be harmful to YouTube themselves or reputation. But anyone can go on YouTube and watch it. It's not private. Now, it might be harmful to people in a private house with discrimination or so forth, you know. YouTube have got their own policies for that. But we're protected from the law, whether we're in private from being prosecuted by the government or in public. We're protected by the law, whether we're in a private house, in public or in a factory, by law, by this right to petition. So why would you be thrown out when the whole thing of them having their policy is to protect them if something's illegal, not if it's just that they don't like it themselves. And they're meant to be, they're allowing everyone on there to read it. They're allowing everyone on there to watch the videos and read the comments. So it's hardly private. They aren't saying, you know, people who are into politics can't go on there. People who support different parties aren't on there. They want everyone to be able to look at it. So if they want everyone to be able to look at it, no matter what their opinions or views are, why don't they want everyone to be able to upload stuff on there, no matter what all their opinions and stuff are, as long as it doesn't break the law? This is the question. Or it might be harmful to our company or business. Well, this is the thing with the newspaper. There's this 501(c). It might be harmful to the political campaign, elections, and referendums and petitions, which is why they're protected, because it's casework. Now, you have to be able to publish it somewhere. You put notices up in public on the streets, right? Whether even you can paint them, or whether they're paper or whatever. There were police were removing those. Now, if the police were removing them in public and ignoring the Town and Country Planning Act, if they're saying you can't, you know, people can stop you coming up the driveway or whatever, you can't post it, service of notices, and then if you're saying you can't do it in businesses and companies, where can you? It would mean that if the council don't let you put it in public or prosecute you for it, if you can't deliver it to any business or private premises where people are, and where can you? Where actually can you? And where are you supposed to? Well, the thing is, you are supposed to post it in the public. You are supposed to put flyers places. You are supposed to talk about it in people's houses. You are supposed to ring people up on the telephone, send them electronic emails through private companies that run emails. Could Microsoft say that you can't send emails, right, about petitions because it's privately owned company? Or Royal Mail's now private. Could Royal Mail say you can't send any letters now that for petitions, we won't deliver them because we're now private, right? This is it. In the newspaper, the public notices section, right, in the newspaper was created so people can put notices. It was created so people can put notices in the newspaper, in public. That's why they have a public notices section, right? And the policy, it's not like a private house, the newspaper. It's meant to be for people to read and people to use and publish in, like a notice board. And that's why they say they will comply with all state and federal law. And a newspaper can get sued for things, but actually not through the ASA, Advertising Standards Agency for Petitions, because they don't govern them. They won't bring any legal action. So actually, YouTube, and this is quite important, I'll use a different colour now, blue. YouTube here, we've got this exemption they've got from liability, but it only applies to things that are illegal that they could be prosecuted against, right? That is pointless with Advertising Standards Agency because they don't govern it. So if you were putting petitions and so forth on there, even if the petitions were breaking the law, when you've got immunity from the law, this is not policy, the law, that legislation, more serious than policy, because all private companies have got to comply with it, then YouTube wouldn't need their immunity because the ASA can't prosecute them because you're prosecuted yourself. You yourself can't be prosecuted if you're on YouTube. Or YouTube couldn't be prosecuted for the political material or you putting it there because the ASA don't govern it. So they won't need their immunity. This is the thing. So why are they going on to this policy thing, which isn't even the law, and starting to discriminate. Now, I believe that in their policy, when it says we will comply with and apply state and federal law, that applies to the right to petition. Now, the thing is, does the right to a petition apply to YouTube or not? Does the right to petition bill apply to the YouTube platform? Or do they say that it doesn't apply here? Well, it does actually apply to that platform. It applies there. It applies there because even if they didn't have their own special immunity enactment, even if they didn't have their own immunity enactment, right, the government couldn't prosecute YouTube and the government couldn't prosecute us. Or the Advertising Standards Agency couldn't take action because of the fact that it's a right to petition and you're protected, right? So it does apply on the YouTube platform and to YouTube. It would actually protect YouTube from being prosecuted and us for having it on there without YouTube needing any of their own additional policies or whatsoever. So it's applicable to YouTube. It's applicable to YouTube. And applicable to YouTube themselves and us because of the nature of your material and its purpose. So that means the bill, the enactment, the whole thing is applicable to YouTube themselves. But they don't want it applicable to their policy, but it applies to them. Now, the policy is meant to cover things that the law does not cover, right? Or that the law might allow, unless the law says otherwise, right? So, discrimination or so forth. Like if Neil Mohan had his private house and made it into a company, anyone could go in there maybe and be racist. But then he'd make a policy up, right, to say that, you will agree to not do that. That's not changing the law. That's just getting you to agree to it. That's the thing with the policy. They have to get you to agree to it. If you are a person of colour and in that private house and they were being racist, you could yourself, even if they didn't tell you to leave and didn't want you to leave, you could choose, I'm not going to come into this house. I don't like, I don't like their rules. They've been discriminative, so I will leave, right? Now, the thing with YouTube is you don't want to leave. And you're not breaking the law, right? And you can't be prosecuted and they can't be prosecuted. They just don't want you to do things on there. Now, the thing is, there is a law here that says you can't be prosecuted, imprisoned, or held to any commitments. I think that means the other enactments applying and creating other laws that might take away free speech or anything like that. Therefore, because the government can't make any laws about this to take it away. I don't think the policy can't take it away, because the thing is, if it did, they would be letting certain people on there, right, and not letting other certain people on there. And that is a form of discrimination. And they've got all these laws that say you can't discriminate against people's opinion, which those discrimination laws which say you can't discriminate against someone's opinion, right? That's why they've made all these policies in private places as well. Now, one of the discriminative factors is your views, right? And I would say that your views, if they're saying you can't discriminate against people's views, right, under that discrimination law, I would suggest that by saying that, it means that where there's any other enactment that is relevant to that or applicable, it must apply. So if you want to split your views into different sections, right, they say that they're not going to be discriminative and you can't discriminate against anyone else, right? So that means that they can't discriminate against your political opinion. And if they're not going to discriminate against your political opinion, then that means that you get the political acts applied to your political opinion of protection, right? Because otherwise, they wouldn't allow any politics on there. If they allow political debate and discussion on there, they've got to apply the law that comes with and entails, right? Because otherwise, that means that either they're allowing political opinion or not. Because then you're going into which political opinion? And this is what this bill is supposed to protect, so everyone can have different political opinions and debate them. Because that's what different political opinions are. So it seems like YouTube and Google are all about trying to control political opinion, yet they say that they will... That is the big contradiction. They're saying that... they're claiming that they will allow different political opinions on there, right? They're not going to kick you off. But then they're saying that they're not going to let you have your enactment that governs that political opinion. They can't, so therefore they can't allow political opinion on there and say we're not going to discriminate against, political opinion versus something else, but then say, for some reason, claim that the enactment that covers that doesn't apply. Because that would be almost like, trying to say that, well, it's contradictory. It's actually contradiction. They want to try and pretend that type of area of discussion doesn't have an enactment. And in fact, they've got to apply that. Unless they have a policy that doesn't allow any political videos or discourse at all, right, they'll have to apply the act, comply with all state and federal law. Because when they invite politics in there, they're inviting that area of discussion and debate and opinion in there. And it comes with, what's the governing law for that? It is this one. This is the right to petition. It is the governing law for that. The right to petition is the governing law for that. That's the governing law for that. So you can't accept the thing on, but not the law that applies to it. That's actually treasonous. It is actually some form of treasonous. And the fact that if it kind of was like members only, and if it was you had to pay to even look at it and read it, then I can understand it. But because it isn't private, because anyone can read it and watch the videos for free, and because you can upload for free, it effectively... It has, regardless of what they're claiming in their policy, because we're challenging their policy, it's basically free ads. All the videos and channels that you have on there are free ads. That they're free to put on there. And it doesn't really matter whether you monetize them or not, right? It's a free ad website, although they have a separate section where they pay for ads, which they call ads. But legally... all representations, messages, videos, notices telling you something they are free ads, right? And it's that 5013C political campaign intervention. And free ads in newspapers and for everywhere is for everyone. And the discrimination laws apply. And with the discrimination laws, it isn't completely and totally private. And the thing is, if they were kind of like saying we don't allow any politics on here, then I could kind of like, there'd be an argument for it, maybe, like someone's private house. But they are allowing in there politics and political discussion, which you've got your free opinion, and that immediately applies this enactment, which they say they'll comply with. So they would have to really have all politics or no politics. And I don't really think they can keep politics off because of free speech, you know? So, you know, the policy speaks for itself. And if you look at the ads, their ads, they're paid for ads. They've got all these, you know, tick in a box, identify it as political, and then put a disclaimer on, you know, for each country and so forth. The thing about their policy is that there's a lot of different people from a lot of different countries on there, and it gets complicated for what the rules are because there's loads of different laws in different countries. Although it's quite easy to see what country you're in, like, you know, Russia and China are censoring certain stuff. They could do that, you know. The policy is extremely vague, but the thing about the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment is that it's essentially similar, if not the same, in America, England, Canada, and Australia, and Commonwealth countries. So, you know, at least between America, England, you know, Canada and Australia, they've got no grounds at all to take videos down, really. There aren't really any grounds for it. And I think it's actually illegal to welcome people on there with a political... That's... Political parties... The thing is, this is going back to why this law was enacted in the first place. In these private houses, even the government were prosecuting them. When the proprietor of the house, right? When the owner of the house, I think I've got to the... I really think that I'm on this now, right? Although it's messy, but when the proprietor of the house, right? When the proprietor invites persons into his house to discuss politics, right, and debate them, he's inviting in a political debate. No matter which party he is, whether he's Labour Party or Tories or, you know, Lib Dem or Labour, he's inviting... Because even political parties have debates about what they are and aren't going to do, right? And that's it. That's it. He can't be prosecuted by the government, and why would he invite his friends into his house to have a political debate if he was going to kick them out again? That's what a debate is. You know, this is what Mark Zuckerberg said, debatable, right? But Mark Zuckerberg, at least, hasn't... I don't think he's... Well, they've been taking petition signatures and links down and restricting people on Messenger because you could effectively kill it on Messenger with group lists in petitions because you've just got exact same people and they respond a lot better to warm calling than cold calling. So, as soon as... Whether it's, you know, private business or a private house... Because he's invited people into it for the reason of a political debate, that means that they're going to argue. And it goes further than the private house because he's got policies and laws, and then half of his policy is discriminatory stuff. But he's trying to take discrimination a step further so he can... They've got these policies where they don't want all the users and people discriminating, right? It's almost like the irony of Rishi Sunak's government and Priti Patel, you know. So basically what they are is they're hypocrites. and they're contradictive. They're saying, oh, you can't say this, you can't do that, behave, don't discriminate, when YouTube itself is discriminating. Because this law allows you to debate and raise matters that otherwise may even be illegal. But the thing is, some of their policy is not even illegal things that they're throwing you off for. Right? They've invited you in for politics, so they've got to imply the Bill of Rights because they say they'll comply with all law. And if they didn't want politics at all, they'd have to kick everyone out. This is it. And, some of those policy clauses are questionable anyway. The fact of, movies have got violence and hate and, but it's acting. Also, we'll put it over 18. Well, why don't they put the petitions over 18? How can you not want, effectively, when you're watching 18 movies, violence and harm and even sexual scenes, you're making sure it's over a certain age, so you're protecting people. And really, the Bill of Rights is legally protecting. Why do they even have an 18 section? I don't think that YouTube it's not private. It's a free ads site. It's free adverts because everything's classed as adverts in the town and country planning, even digital. It's free ads. It's open to the public. It's not private. It's privately owned, but it's not private. It's definitely not private. It is like, similar to a library and so forth, and these licenses, like with the bill, even if you own private property, even if YouTube own the building, they're not allowed to do certain things with their own building. They can't even do certain things with their own building unless they get permission from the council, and that's the thing with the right to petition. They can't actually, if you wanted to stop people having the political rights, you wouldn't open a video platform or have a newspaper. You wouldn't. They're trying to, what they're actually trying to do is they're buying all these things up, these big companies, and trying to change it. Because what it is at the start of the Bill of Rights, in the opening part of it, it's talking about the freedom and liberties of the realm. It's talking about the freedom and liberties of the realm. And that is what we are protected for. The complete and total freedom and liberties of the realm. That is what we are protected for. And that is why that enactment was made, because they tried to undermine it. And it was mainly judges, ministers and councillors, evil ones, that were undermining the liberties of the realm. But now who's undermining the liberties of the realm are, well, the MPs aren't helping us out. The government and Rishi Sunak should have sorted all this out for us. The courts should have, and the councillors, but they haven't. What's happening now is the private companies, the private organisations and companies are subverting the liberties of the realm, because David Cameron said, oh, yeah, it'll be good to be competitive and sell them all off, right? And what they're doing now is, now they've bought them all, is they're trying to subvert the liberties of the realm. So, this Bill of Rights needs to be extended to companies and businesses, although I think it covers them, because, they have to accept it. It's one of the rights and laws and liberties of the realm, so they have to accept it. And they can't invite people on who are in favour of their opinions and not of the people who are in disfavour of the opinions. And that's where their policy is actually discriminating. That's it. Their policy is discrimination. Yet they've got the cheek to say that, they're making this policy to stop discrimination. It's actually discriminating. And they don't like the fact that people might be debating YouTube on there. YouTube don't like the fact that people are debating YouTube, but that's the point in a debate. You go into a house, it's almost like Labour throwing Jeremy Corbyn and, all these other people out of their political parties, but he can't throw him out of Parliament. And in fact, Corbyn really should have taken him to court, really, if he hadn't broken the law, Corbyn probably has a case, you know, of his political party. Like Jason Williamson. You know, if it's political, Jason Williamson from Sleaford Mods got removed from Labour. I think it's the Labour Party who are behind all this, you know, because how can a healthy party have debate over what their policies should be if they're not allowing debate? You know, this is it. And you know, you are allowed to even break the law, even, let alone just do something that Starmer doesn't like or whatever, you know? Or at least in publishing, anyway.